It is no surprise that the much awaited third season of Netflix India's Delhi Crime had the monumental task of living up to the standards of its preceding seasons. Truthfully, by the time we get to the third season of any show, we're always more interested in measuring where the latest season stands in comparison to the previous seasons, without checking the direction in which the show chooses to go. Case in point, Mirzapur Season 3. This comes both as a hurdle and a stepping stone for the makers of shows like Delhi Crime, whose recurring characters are its only vectors instead of a common storyline. Every season deals with a different episode of a horrific true crime in the capital city. Police remains the same, but the procedural is determined by the dynamics of the criminals and the context of the crime. If Delhi Crime Season 1 was a race against the system to chase the culprits and bring justice to a victim of a heinous crime that shook the conscience of a nation, Season 2 was a race against time and system in order to prevent a series of ongoing crimes by an elusive gang of serial killers. So, does the third season of Delhi Crime build up on its first two seasons? Or does it fall short of doing justice to the reputation of the show? Let's find out as we cut to insight.
बड़ी सयानी चार घरा का भर लिया पानी.
Creator Richie Mehta sets up the third season of the show with a clear understanding of the journey so far. The singular victim in the first season of the show, based on the Nirbhaya gang rape and murder, made way for the multiple victims in season 2, inspired by the actions of the Kacha Banyan gang. In this edition, the focus pulls out on a much wider group of victims as the show expands its boundaries of crime both in scope and geography. What it retains from season 1 is the inspection of crimes against women, and what it retains from season 2 is that the perpetrators are also increasingly, worryingly, but not shockingly, women. DCP Vartika Chaturvedi, played by the ever-effective Shefali Shah, is transferred as a punishment posting to the Northeast India for her defiance in season 2. The torrential rains and lush greens from Assam and Mizoram are intercut with the curated greenery and foggy visuals of Delhi. The visuals of Delhi are dark and dull, much like the first two seasons. At one point, a cop even addresses the low visibility when checking for clues on a CCTV footage. During one of her investigations in the smuggling of weapons in Assam, Vartika uncovers a cross-border human trafficking racket when she seizes a container full of underage girls being transported to Delhi. The message is clear. Such crimes are only chanced upon instead of being chased from the get-go, as seen previously and elaborately in Amazon Prime's Dahad. In fact, this 6-episode series only springs into action in episode 3 when the cops learn who they really need to look for. The characters that are chased and questioned in the first 2 episodes of the show are rarely seen later on in the show, indicating that they're only facilitators of a larger organized crime syndicate. One of the facilitators is a particularly fun to watch lady pimp, Kalyani, played by Mita Vashisht, who is easily one of the most interesting performances of the season. This human trafficking case brings Vartika back to Delhi, where an emotionally discharged Neeti, played by Rasika Dugal, is leading an investigation into the case of a young girl child who is abandoned in a battered state in Ames, Delhi. As the two investigations coincide, the net widens and the hunt begins for the orchestrator of this human trafficking racket, who is revealed to us early on to be Badi Didi, played by Huma Qureshi. This season is inspired by the Baby Falak case from 2012, where an abandoned child at Ames uncovered a dark and sordid story of exploitation. A few details stand out right away. The cop characters in Delhi Crime are now far more aware of the world that they live in. They confirm our biases at regular intervals, both for exposition and internalization. We know that Vartika's delusions about the habitability of Delhi in season 1 are shattered when we see her daughter has moved to Canada in season 2. Later, she herself moves away from Delhi instead of resigning upon learning that she'll not be promoted for dedication but transferred for insubordination. Neeti is also aware of the perils of her professional life and how it constantly provokes her personal life. Bhupendra, played by the ever-reliable Rajesh Tailang, realizes that his reflexes don't serve him the way they used to when a key suspect slips away from him by holding him at gunpoint. In a similar scene, Vartika is also deceived by Badi Didi and manages to slip away from right in front of her. The crew is aging and more recognizable now, while the criminals are getting younger, smarter, and more indistinguishable. By now, the show is also self-aware of the fact that Vartika and her team are outliers in a system riddled with complacency. One of my issues with the very first season of Telecrime was that it appeared to be a persuasive piece of police propaganda given the times of police brutality, and that it had a reductive view of the public. By keeping the dream team intact for a third season, the show admits that these super cops far exceed the average policing in the country, and the average citizen may or may not be deserving of them. When a child is reunited with his mother by Vartika and her team in one of the scenes, the little boy wonders if he could go back to the father who bought him from a pimp instead of going back to his biological mother. While this commentary is interesting, the show, however, at no point allows itself to operate on the same level of moral grey area as its previous seasons, most notably season 2. One of the highlights of the sophomore edition of Delhi Crime was how Vartika had to constantly battle her own bias, class, and caste superiority from meddling with her empathetic investigative methods. This internal tussle was intensified and underlined by the tight close-up shots of her face with her glassy eyes at the center of the frame. It denoted that Vartika's perspective and point of view mattered more than anything else. In this season, however, those same tight close-up shots offer nothing new because of Vartika's clarity of thought and the show's refusal to allow her a chance to introspect her actions. Unlike a Dahad, where Sonakshi's Anjali Bhati was constantly at odds with the masculinity of a workplace, patriarchy of a society, and caste bias of a country, Delhi Crime's third installment does not offer any characteristic obstacles to its lead protagonist, thereby reducing it to a generic cat and mouse game and a strangely out of character season. The old songs playing in the background in season 1 are missing here, so are the protesters outside the police station demanding justice for baby Falak, who is renamed to baby Noor here. I realized as I watched that the protesters outside the police station were at worst a tacky narrative device to depict the position of public in the scheme of things, but at their best, they created a sense of urgency and mounted pressure on the cops and the authorities. What's also missing are the vivid descriptions and depictions of the brutality of the crimes committed. As a result of these absent links, the show's editing is confused as to how to stage the investigation in the backdrop of not just a city but a nation. And so the intercutting between the parallel tracks of the show feel out of sync, leading to an inconsistently paced season. The effect of expanding the perimeter of crime from Delhi to most of India as an obvious consequence of a cross-border human trafficking story is that it fails to triangulate the epicenter of horror. After a point, I lost track of who to really feel for. By broadening the denominator of its setting without increasing the numerator of its characters, unfortunately, Delhi Crime Season 3 ends up being a fraction of its previous seasons. Please do let me know what you thought of Delhi Crime Season 3 in the comments section, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more such reviews.